By 715, the Arabs had conquered almost the whole of Spain, but they hadn't conquered the hearts of Spain's men and women. In one man in particular, Pelayo, burned the flame of defiance in the face of the Arab victory. Welcome to Real Crusades History, the complete history of the Crusades series, Part 1, The Rise of Islam and its Impact on Christian Civilization, Episode 11, Pelayo and the Dawn of the Reconquista. Real Crusades History is the best source on the web for the history of the Crusades. If you like this channel, please make a donation using the PayPal link in the About box, or go to realcrusadeshistory.com and click Donate. Following their conquest of Spain, the Arab emirs paid little attention to the isolated pockets of Christian resistance in the far northerly mountains. A few Muslim garrisons were established in these regions, such as the fortress under Munuza, who was the official Arab governor of the Asturias. But in the remote Middle Pyrenees, Arab power held no sway. The mountain-dwelling people of Cantabria, Asturias, and Galicia established the foundations of the Kingdom of Asturias. The first leader of this Christian resistance was Pelayo. The earliest chronicle describing Pelayo's life comes to us from the Chronicle of Albelda, written around a century after Pelayo lived. Pelayo's name was the Spanish version of the Latin Pelagius, which means man of the seashore. He was born in the Asturias in the northerly mountains of Iberia, watching over the coast at Gijón. Among his ancestors were Visigothic kings. Duke Vahila, his father, had been slain by King Witiza himself, for Pelayo's family had been closely allied to Roderick. The Chronicle of Alfonso III describes Pelayo as the sword-bearer to Roderick, alongside whom he fought at the Battle of Guadalete. After the Arab victory, Pelayo returned to the Asturias, where he lived at his ancestral home with his sister. In 717, Munuza, the Muslim governor of the Asturias, selected Pelayo as a hostage to accompany a Muslim convoy on its way to Cordoba, the new Arab capital. With Pelayo gone, Munuza, who had taken an interest in Pelayo's beautiful sister, put the young Visigothic maiden in his harem. Meanwhile, Pelayo rode south, his life in the hands of his Muslim captors. All along the journey, he saw the evidence of Arab triumph, new fortresses being built, mosques being raised, Arab and Berber garrisons ruling over the native Spaniards. A territory that had belonged to his people for some 250 years was now firmly in the grip of an external power. Spain, once a Christian kingdom, was now a Muslim land. We can only imagine the devastation Pelayo experienced as he witnessed all this. It was summer, and so the farther Pelayo and the Muslims traveled south, the hotter it became. Soon the caravan was traveling by the cool of the evening and morning, resting during the high heat of noon. The road was long, both familiar and strange to Pelayo, but this road that Pelayo traveled would prove to be longer than even he knew. For Pelayo was on a journey that began not only a new chapter in his life, but a new age for all of Spain. Eventually, horrible news reached Pelayo from back home in Asturias. He learned that his beloved sister had been put into Munuza's harem. The rage rose fiercely in Pelayo's heart. In violating his kinswoman, the Muslims had gone too far. Immediately he made his decision. The next time the caravan camped for rest, Pelayo snuck out, perhaps killing an Arab guard or two as he slipped away into the wilderness. This act of defiance, this moment of courage, was to be the first blow of Spain's great 800-year-long crusade to drive out the Muslims, the Reconquista. A wanted man on the run, Pelayo dashed across the Iberian countryside. The Arab authorities were alerted, and search parties went out, combing the flatlands of La Mancha, scouring the Guadalramas in the north. Pelayo had to watch his every move, but he knew these territories. This was his homeland. He knew how to hide and how to move through areas where he was unlikely to be caught. At Bressa, an Arab band nearly captured him, but Pelayo plunged his horse into the river Polona, swimming the steed straight across before vanishing into the mountains. By winter 718, Pelayo was back in the region of his birth, the Asturias. He spent the cold months in the Cantabrian mountains, The local Christians, his own people, took him in. These remote mountains were the last holdout where Iberian Christians could live free of Muslim rule. It was during these bitter, grim months of hiding that Pelayo and the other men began talking of resistance. These proud warriors, the last of the Visigoths, had no intention of remaining hidden in the mountains forever. Pelayo inspired them and rallied them to his leadership. By spring, Pelayo had forged a small but determined army of 300 men, made up of surviving Visigothic veterans and rugged Cantabrian mountain men clad in animal skins. They met in a cave on the mountain of Alsava, known as Covadonga. There, they held the first assembly in what would be the new Christian Spain. The Chronicle of Alfonso III tells us that Pelayo was elected king, but historian Joseph O'Callaghan doubts this, believing instead that Pelayo was simply chosen as leader. The Chronicle of Alfonso III presents Pelayo as reestablishing the old Visigothic kingdom in his mountain holdout, but O'Callaghan believes it more likely that Pelayo was founding something entirely new. Whatever the nature of Pelayo's new statelet, it was a tiny holdout in the treacherous mountains, 20 miles across on both sides, so small and wild that the Muslims didn't bother subduing it. However, the Arabs of Spain were interested in invading the land of the Franks to the north, what we today call France. Assam, the Arab governor of Al-Andalus, the Arab term for Iberia, personally led a large Arab army into France, capturing Narbonne in 719. He pressed on to Toulouse, but he was killed there in battle with the Franks. He was succeeded by Anbassa, who fully intended to continue the attacks on France, although he began to hear from his men about some troublesome little band of rebels in the Cantabrian mountains. Apparently they were Christians, led by an outlaw called Pelayo, and they had been ambushing Muslim convoys, taking Arab troops by surprise, slaying as many as they could before disappearing again into the wilderness. Anbassa found it annoying that the local garrisons couldn't handle these bandits. In 722, he decided to assemble a force to go into the mountains of the north and put an end to this nonsense once and for all. Cantabria was a treacherous region. Anbassa dispatched a small squadron to try and negotiate with the Christian renegades. He sent one of his lieutenants, Alcama, along with the bishop Opas, who had pledged loyalty to the Arabs. Pelayo and his companions withdrew to Covadonga, awaiting their next move, while Alcama's band tried to scale the steep defiles. The date was May 28. Spanish tradition associates the Blessed Mother with Covadonga. It is likely that Pelayo and his men prayed to her that day, begging her to give them victory in the face of this impossibly strong enemy. Finally, Pelayo's group made contact with Alcama, who offered them terms. The Chronicle of Alfonso III, one of our earliest primary sources for the history of the Reconquista, records what happened next. Pelayo was on Mount Alsava with his allies. The army advanced to him and set up countless tents before the mount of the cave. Bishop Opa ascended the hill in front of Covadonga and spoke to Pelayo, saying, "Pelayo, Pelayo, where are you?" Whereupon Pelayo, from an opening in the cliff, responded, "Here I am." The bishop said to him, "I think that it is not unknown to you, brother and son, how all of Spain, a short time ago, was organized according to one order, under the rule of the Goths, and that it outshone all other lands in learning and knowledge. If, when the entire army of the Goths was assembled, it was unable to sustain the attacks of the Ishmaelites, how much better will you be able to defend yourself on this mountaintop? To me it seems difficult. Rather, heed my warning, and recall your soul from this decision, so that you may take advantage of many good things and enjoy the partnership of the Moors." To this Pelayo responded, "Have you not read in the divine scripture that the church of God is compared to a mustard seed, and that it will be raised up again through divine mercy?" The bishop responded, "It is indeed written thus." Pelayo said, "Christ is our hope, that through this little mountain, which you see, the well-being of Spain and the army of the Gothic people will be restored. I have faith that the promise of the Lord, which was spoken through David, will be fulfilled in us. I will visit their iniquities with the rod and their sins with the scourges, but I will not remove my mercy from them. Now, therefore, trusting in the mercy of Jesus Christ, I despise this multitude, and am not afraid of it. As for the battle with which you threaten us, we have for ourselves an advocate in the presence of the Father, that is, the Lord Jesus Christ, who is capable of liberating us from these few. Frustrated and annoyed, Alcama withdrew to return to Anbasa's palace and inform him of what had happened. But Pelayo's men followed him. From the steep heights, the Christian soldiers hurled boulders and spears down on the Muslims and launched arrows at them. The Muslim force, barely able to tell where the attacks were coming from, was scattered. Many Muslims fell into the river and were swept away. Alcama himself was killed. Bishop Opus was captured. When news reached Munuza, in his Asturian fortress, of Pelayo's victory over Alcama, he immediately fled, but Pelayo's men captured and killed him at a village. Pelayo then occupied Munuza's fortress, but the sources do not tell us if he was able to rescue his sister. Pelayo's little kingdom then joined formally with his Cantabrian allies when Pelayo gave his daughter, Ermesinda, in marriage to Alfonso, the Cantabrian prince. A new kingdom was born. The Mozarabic Chronicle of 754, written in Seville, far to the south, appears to reference Pelayo's victory that day in the mountains in the following passage. Firmly convinced of the power of God, in whose mercy the few Christians who held yonder mountain peaks trusted, after following the dangerous and little-known paths, having lost many of its soldiers, the Muslim army was able to reach the plain by a difficult march and return to their homeland. After the incident at Covadonga, Anbasa dismissed the idea of bothering with Pelayo's tiny kingdom any further. His men fought poorly in the Cantabrian defiles, and thus it seemed wiser to simply stay out of them. The little Christian statelet was permitted to endure, with Pelayo ruling until his death, 15 years later. For its capital, Pelayo chose the village of Cañas de Oñas, which was little more than a settlement on a mountain. The Muslims dismissed the Christian outpost as beneath their concern, and indeed most of Spain's Arabs were barely even aware it existed. One Muslim chronicler described Pelayo and his men as wild asses and asked, "What are 30 barbarians on a rock? They must inevitably die." Few predictions have proved so wrong as that of that Muslim chronicler writing at the dawn of the age of Islamic Spain. For Pelayo and his band of mountaineers would germinate the vastly powerful Christian Spain, which would ultimately destroy every last Islamic principality in Iberia. The longest crusade in history had begun. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel. Check out realcrusadeshistory.com for more info. Also, to support this channel, please click on the donate link in the about box of this video to make a PayPal donation, or go to realcrusadeshistory.com and click on donate.